Chapter 7 of Tuck Everlasting by Natalie Babbitt. It was the strangest story Winnie had ever heard. She soon suspected they had never told it before, except to each other, but that she was their first real audience, for they gathered around her like little children at their mother's knee, each trying to claim her attention, and sometimes they all talked at once, and interrupted each other in their eagerness. 87 years before the Tucks had come from a long way to the east, looking for a place to settle. In those days the wood was not a wood, it was a forest, just as her grandmother had said, a forest that went on and on and on. They had thought they would start a farm as soon as they came to the end of the trees. But the trees never seemed to end. When they came to the part that was now the wood, and turned from the trail to find a camping place, they happened on the spring. "It was real nice," said Jess with a sigh. "It looked just the way it does now. A clearing, lots of sunshine, the big tree with all those knobby roots. We stopped and everyone took a drink, even the horse." "No," said May, "the cat didn't drink." "That's important." "Yes," said Miles. "Don't leave that out. We all had a drink except for the cat." "Well, anyway," Jess went on, "the water tasted sort of strange, but we camped there overnight, and Pa carved a T on the tree trunk to mark where we had been, and then we went on." They had come out of the forest at last, many miles to the west, and had found a thinly populated valley and started their farm. "We put up a house for Ma and Pa," said Miles, "and a little shack for Jess and me. We figured we'd be starting families of our own pretty soon, and that we wanted our own houses." "That was for the first time we figured out that something peculiar," said May. "Jess fell out of a tree." "I was way up in the middle," Jess interrupted, "trying to saw off some of the big branches before we cut her down. I lost my balance and I fell." "He landed plumb on his head," said May with a shudder. "We thought for sure he'd broke his neck, but come to find out it didn't hurt him a bit." "Not long after," Miles went on, "some hunters come by one day at sunset. The horse was out grazing by some trees, and they shot him. Mistook him for a deer, they said. Can you fancy that? But the thing is, they didn't kill him. The bullet went right on through him, and didn't even hardly leave a mark. Then Pa got snake bite, and Jess ate the poisoned toadstools, and I cut myself," said May. "Remember, slicing bread?" But it was the passage of time that worried them most. They had worked the farm, settled down, made friends, but after 10 years, then 20 years, they had to face the fact that there was something terribly wrong. None of them were getting older. I was more than 50 by then," said Miles sadly. "I was married, I had 2 children, but from the look of me, I was still 22. My wife, she finally made up her mind I'd sold my soul to the devil. She left me. She went away, and she took the children with her." "I'm glad I never got married," Jess put in. "It was the same with our friends," said May. "They never come to pull back from us. That there was talk about witchcraft, black magic. Well, you can hardly blame them, but finally we had to leave the farm. We didn't know where to go. We started back the way we come, just wandering. Was like little gypsies. When we got this far, it changed, of course. A lot of the trees were gone. There was people and Tree Gap. It was a new village. The road was here, but in those days it was mostly just a cow patch. We went on into what was left of the wood and make a camp, and when we got to the clearing and the tree, the spring, we remembered it from before." "It hadn't changed, no more had we," said Miles, "and that was how we found out. Pa carved a T on the tree. Remember, 20 years before, but the T was just where it had been when he done it. That tree hadn't grown one whit in all that time. It was exactly the same, and the T he had carved was as fresh as if he had just been there." Then they had remembered drinking the water. They and the horse, but not the cat. The cat had lived a long and happy life on the farm, but had died some 10 years before. So they decided the last day the source of their changelessness was the spring. "When we came to that conclusion," May went on, "Tuck said, 'That's my husband, Angus Tuck.' He said he had to be sure, once and for all. He took his shotgun, and he pointed at himself the best way he could, and before we could stop him, he pulled the trigger." There was a long pause. May's fingers laced together in her lap, twisted with the tension of remembering. At last, she said, the shot knocked him down. Went into his heart. It had to, the way he aimed, and right on through him. It scarcely even left a mark, just like, like the shot a bullet through water. And he was just the same as he'd never done it. After that, we went sort of crazy, said Jess, grinning at the memory. Heck, we was going to live forever. Can you picture what it felt like to find that out? But then he went down and talked it over, said Miles. We're still talking it over, Jess added. And we figured it'd be very bad if anyone knowed about that spring, said May. We began to see what it would mean. She peered at Winnie. Do you understand, child? That water, it stops you right where you are. If you'd had drunken of it today, you'd still be a little girl forever. You'd never grow up, no, ever. We don't know how it works or even why, said Miles. Pa thinks it's something left over from some other plan for the way the world should be, said Jess. Some plan that didn't work out too good. And so everything was changed, except that spring was passed over, somehow or another. Maybe he's right. I don't know, but you see, Winnie Foster, when I told you before I'm 104 years old, I was telling the truth. But I'm really only 17, and so far as I know, I'll stay 17 till the end of the world. Chapter 8. Winnie did not believe in fairy tales. She had never longed for a magic wand, did not expect to marry a prince, and was scornful most of the time of her grandmother's elves. So now she sat mouth open, wide-eyed, not knowing what to make of this extraordinary story. It could not be true, and yet it feels so fine to tell everybody, Jess exploded. Just think, Winnie Foster, you're the only person in the whole world besides us who knows about it. Hold on now, said Miles cautiously. Maybe not. There might be a whole lot of others, for all we know, wandering around just like us. Maybe, but we don't know them, Jess pointed out. We've never had anyone but us to talk about it to. Winnie, isn't it peculiar and kind of wonderful? Just think of all the things we've seen in the world, all the things we're going to see. That kind of talking makes her want to rush back and drink a gallon of that stuff, warned Miles. There's a whole lot more to it than that, Jess. Tuck's good times, you know. Oh, stuff, said Jess with a shrug. We might as well enjoy it long as we can't change it. You don't have to be such a parson all the time. I'm not being a parson, said Miles. I just think you ought to take it more serious. Now, boys, said May. She was kneeling by the stream, splashing her face and hands with cool water. Woo! Such weather, she exclaimed, sitting back on her heels. She unfastened the brooch and took off her shawl and toweled her dripping face. Well, child, she said to Winnie, standing up, now you share our secret. It's a big, dangerous secret. We got to have your help to keep it. I expect you're full of questions, but we can't stay here no longer. She tied the shawl around her waist then and sighed. It pains me to think how much your ma and pa will worry, but there's just no way around it. We got to take you home with us. That's the plan. Tuck, he'll want to talk it out. Make sure you see why you can't tell no one. But we'll bring you back tomorrow, all right? And all three of them looked at her hopefully. All right, said Winnie, for she decided there wasn't any choice. She wouldn't have to go. They would probably make her go anyway, no matter what she said, but she felt there was nothing to be afraid of, not really. For they seemed gentle and in a strange way childlike. They made her feel all old, and the way they spoke to her, the way she looked at her, made her feel special, important. It was a warm, spreading feeling, entirely new. She liked it, and in spite of their story, she liked them too, especially Jess. But it was Miles who took her hand and said, It's really fine to have you along, even if it's only for a day or two. Then Jess gave a great whoop and leaped into the stream, splashing mightily. What'd you bring for breakfast, Ma? He cried. When can we eat on the way? Can't we? I'm starving. So with the sun riding high now in the sky, they started off again, noisy in the August stillness, eating bread and cheese. Jess sang funny old songs in a loud voice and swung like a monkey from the branches of the tree, showing off shamelessly for Winnie, calling to her, Hey, Winnie Foster, watch me, and look what I can do, and Winnie laughing at him, lost and last of her alarm. There were her friends. They were her friends, her friends. She was running away after all, but was not alone. Closing the gate on her oldest fear, she had closed the gate of her own fear fenced yard. She discovered the wings she had always wished she had, and all at once she elated. Where were the terrors she had told she expect? She could not recognize them anywhere. The sweet earth opened out its wide four corners to her like the petals of a flower ready to be picked, and it shimmered with light and possibility. Still she was dizzy with it. Her mother's voice, the feel of home, receded for the moment, and her thoughts turned forward. Why, she too might live forever in this remarkable world if she only just discovering the story of the spring. It might be true, so that when she was still not rolling along on the back of that fat old horse by choice this time, she ran shouting down the road, her arms flung out, making more noise than anybody. It was good, so good, in fact, that through it all, not one of them noticed that though many of them had passed on the road, the man in the yellow suit had crept up to the bushes by the stream and heard it all, the whole fantastic story. Nor did they notice that he was following now, beside the road, far behind, his mouth above his thin gray beard, turned ever so slightly toward a smile.